It's interesting how many things I find myself wanting to change now that I'm rebuilding the game, but that's kind of the point of prototyping, isn't it? A lot of ideas and realizations won't come about until you have something at least partly built to experiment with and see how it feels. I wasn't planning on starting over after the prototype, but this sort of clean slate makes it a lot easier to improve things I might have just left alone otherwise. Take for instance the crew actions. In the prototype, the crew actions were all tangled up with UI code. The buttons for moving, dodging, etc. were created up front in the editor, and the code to actually execute those actions was scattered all around the Overlord script. But now the selected unit generates a list of actions dynamically, and the buttons are created at runtime. There are a few big improvements here. First, each equipped item can add an arbitrary number of buttons. I don't have an example in-game yet, but this could be useful for something like a grappling gun that can either pull you toward an enemy or pull an enemy toward you with alternate firing modes. I can also have level up perks that give crew additional equipment slots instead of being limited to 2. Or perhaps perks like Sixth Sense, which lets the unit detect cloaked enemies, could become an active ability that adds a new action button. I've got lots of flexibility now, and so will modders. Another big change here is action types, for how the action is initiated. Whenever I define a new action, I can choose whether it's an instant activation when you click it, if you need to select a target tile first, or if it needs an aiming direction. In the past, all weapons were aimed and all other equipment did instant activation. Changing this was primarily motivated by the awkwardness of teleporters in the prototype. Because there was no way to select a target tile for actions, each destination was a separate action that appeared in a drop-down list. I don't have teleporters back in the game yet, but when I do, you'll just be able to click on the tile of the teleporter you want to go to, and better yet, they'll be highlighted. That highlighted area for the movement range isn't just for movement anymore. Any action can provide a list of applicable tiles to highlight, and then my UI helper class converts that to a mesh when the action is selected. This new flexibility is giving me ideas for more equipment I want to add, and I'm really looking forward to that kind of content creation. You may have noticed I also put some animation on that action bar. I was watching some of Yahtzee's Dev Diary series on YouTube, and his talk about a juiciness factor in animations got me thinking. I've known for a long time that linear animation isn't very satisfying. It looks so much better when you have acceleration and deceleration in movement. I've usually done this with variations on the cosine curve. The slope of cosine starts flat at 0, gradually gets steeper, and then flattens out again at the bottom. Using a curve like this makes animations smooth and satisfying to a degree, but Yahtzee made me realize I can take this a step further. This isn't quite the same kind of animation he was talking about, so I'm not doing quite the same thing, but the general idea here is to have a quick part followed by a slow part. This is the curve I've come up with. It's still based on cosine, but I've made that beginning part accelerate very quickly, and then the deceleration is slower as it slides into its final position. I might still adjust this curve later, but I think it's already more satisfying than a plain cosine. I've also set up my UI helper class to make it really easy to add this kind of animation on any Vector2 property of any node, so you'll probably be seeing a lot of smooth slides like this throughout the UI. I've also been rethinking the control scheme a bit. In the prototype, all mouse control was done with left click. Now I'm thinking executing actions that need a target or aiming will be done with right click. That way you don't accidentally move if you're trying to select a unit but you're a few pixels off. I've definitely done that before in testing. This control scheme is still subject to change, and don't worry, there will be keyboard controls too. I already had them in the prototype, but I guess it didn't come across well in the videos. That's about all that's new for this week. Next I want to sort out actions from objects on the board, like opening doors, using teleporters, and picking up dropped weapons. However, I'm at a point where I really need more art assets to start putting these objects in the game. Everything in the game now is still just placeholder stuff I created. Unfortunately, the pixel artist who was going to be doing sprites for characters and other interior objects had to drop out of the project due to lack of time, so I'm looking for a new one, or perhaps better yet, a second 3D artist, or even a voxel artist. Flat sprites in a 3D environment can work, but it's probably not ideal. I was really only taking that approach because I wanted to stick to artists I know, and I already had a great pixel artist on the team. I'm a bit wary of contracting strangers on the internet that aren't even a friend of a friend, but if you know any pixel or 3D artists who might be interested, please do drop a comment or get in touch on Discord. It's also really helpful if you hit the like button, spread the word about this video series, and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for watching.